The Shumanchu podcast. We have come from Okinawa and Ryūkyū to be here today. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land, Indigenous Lenape land as guests, and we are very grateful to those folks that we are able to be here today. And thank you to Cultural Survival for hosting us, as well as the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. Before we begin, we'd like to start with a short prayer. So if you would like, please join us. サリウトウトアートウトウヤファーフジウカミシティゴアフデービル昼夜ゆかる日まさる日 UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues デービルアガイヌウカミガナシイリヌウカミガナシ西ヌウカミガナシフィーヌウカミガナシウカミのメンソーチャルクトゥシディゴアフデイビルミーマンティミソーリウタビミソーリサリウトウトアートウト Thank you. And with that, I would like to begin. We have 6 wonderful representatives here with us today from various intersectional identities relating to Okinawa. And so I would like to begin with introducing Shinako Oyakawa, and I will pass the microphone to her to give her introduction. If you could please say your name, where your ancestral homelands are, and then your positionality related to Okinawa. Onigesabira.
Hi. Hi, Taigusuyo, Ryūkyū Karamen, and Chabitan. Oyaka Shinako Niyabing. I'm Shinako Oyaka from Okinawa Island of Ryūkyū. My ancestor is from Haneji and Misato, and I am a co-chair of Axios. I'm so happy to come back to this media zone. So nice to meet you all.
Hai Taigusuyo tu ganabira wanne makureru fugushikua chan yaibin wata yofa fuje tsukazan kara chavita yutasarugutu nige sabira. Hi, my name is Alexis McClellan Ufugushiku. I'm mixed race Uchinanshu from South Bay, San Diego originally. My ancestors and my whole family still lives on Okinawa Island in the village of Tsukazan in Hayabaru, as well as in Shitahaku in Kochin Dayase. I'm the English language statement writer for Axels and jobs. And I'm also a postdoc at UC San Diego in the history department, studying the history of our people at the UN, so very timely.
Hi, Taigusuyo, Yamashiro Rinda Yaibin. My name is Rinda Yamashiro. My ancestor is from Yakena, and I grew up in Okinawa City. For this forum, I am representing NIWA, Network of Indigenous Women in Asia. Back home, I'm a member of Axels, as well as member of AIPR, Association of Indigenous Peoples in the Ryūkyūs.
Hi, Taigusuyo. 聞こえる？すみません。Hi, Taigusuyo. Wanne Nakaganeku Saito Nozomi Yaibin. Hi, everyone. I'm Nozomi Nakaganeku Saito. I'm here thanks to Axels for inviting me. I was born in Japan, but I have lived in the United States since I was 5, and I currently live in Massachusetts. I am an assistant professor at Amherst College in the Department of English and Asian American and Pacific Islander Studies. Yutasarugutu nige sabira.
Hi, Sai. Wanne Matayoshi Rina Yaibin. Uchinajima kara Chabitan. My name is Rina Matayoshi, and I'm Uchinanchu, come from Uchina Island, one of the biggest Ryūkyū Islands. And my people, my family is come from Shichabaru, Gushikawa, Namano Urumashi. And my father's side is Ibaru, Gushcha, Urumashi. So it's really tiny community, and everybody's from there. And now I'm living in Massachusetts. I'm a graduate student at University of Massachusetts Amherst, studying social justice education. I think it's very important, social justice education, in terms of Okinawa current situation we're in. And yes, education is needed. And I'm really looking forward to talk more.
Hai sai gusuyo chuganavira wanne Kinjo Victoria Ibin. Hello everyone. I'm Victor Kinjo. I'm born and raised in Brazil, but my grandparents and great-grandparents are from Ryūkyū, Okinawa, specifically from Nahashi and Oroku, Oroku Tabaru. And I'm now a researcher and coordinator of the group in Arts and Planetary Health at the Institute of Advanced Studies in the University of São Paulo, and also becoming an invited teacher, a professor at the State University of São Paulo Institute of Arts. So we've been working in bridging or strengthening the relations and the knowledge between the diasporic communities in Brazil, Latin America, and the Ryūkyū Islands and the US. And we are very happy again to be here at the UN, meeting our brothers and sisters from all over the world. It's strengthening a lot our identity and our thoughts to be here. So thank you very much again for cultural survival and for all of you.
Thank you so much. It's a great lead into our first question that we have, which is around identity.
Introduce yourself.
A little bit in the beginning, yeah. My name is Mariko Sakiyama Middleton. I have maternal roots in Nanjoshi, Sashiki village in Okinawa. And in terms of my positionality, I am also diasporic mixed race Uchinanchu. I am one of the co-founders of the Ichariba podcast and have been helping. I'm a member of Axles and also helping to uplift the voices of the Ryūkyūan community in the diaspora. And that is a lead in to my next question, which hopefully, as you can hear, there's great diversity in the way that Okinawan people show up in the world today, especially related to diaspora, related to the military, and various other things that will come up through our conversation today. And so what I'm curious about is how each one of you awoke into the identity of indigeneity, because I think that is something that hasn't totally fully been claimed in Ryūkyū. And so did you have an awakening moment, and is that something that you could share with the rest of us? I will pass to Shinako-san.
Hi, everyone. When I was undergraduate student of the University of the Ryūkyū, I had chance to go to University of Hawaii as exchange students. There, I could meet the Okinawan diaspora. We have, in 1879, Ryūkyū was forcibly annexed by Japan. So ever since Okinawa was told, like, you are the local community, unique, but you are Japanese, you are part of Japan. But when I went to Hawaii, I could see a lot of Okinawan people in Hawaii. And that was my awaken, my eye-opening point. That I didn't know anything about, we have diaspora all around the world, because we never taught, we don't learn our Okinawans history in school. So so ignorant, I didn't know. It's a shame, but at the same time, I learned about Okinawa for the first time in Hawaii, and then our people and our history. So I went to Hawaii, and then I met Okinawan people, and then I started to proud of being Okinawan, Uchinanchu. And then at the same time, the Hawaii is the indigenous land, but I didn't know about that either. So I thought Hawaii is America. But when I went there and then study, and then I met the indigenous people in Hawaii, and then they're doing the language, revitalization. They opened the immersion school, they teach at school, the new speakers. born and then they're using the language, they're fighting for language revitalization. That was really cool, you know. And then so from studying abroad in Hawaii, that was my turning point. I start to feel like I'm proud of Okinawan, and then I understand learning from the Hawaiian, indigenous history, and then we are indigenous people. Okay, that was really changed my life. How to see Okinawa, how to see our people, and then how to solve our issues. We were kind of forcibly, have been, because of the colonization and imperialism. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, so I think growing up in Southern California in a U.S. English-speaking context, I grew up around other Uchinanchu. I grew up around a lot of mixed-race Okinawans who had similar stories to mine. They either had a mother or a grandmother who married a U.S. soldier, and then when that U.S. soldier got sent back to the U.S., they end up in San Diego in a lot of cases. And so I grew up around other Okinawan people, which I'm very fortunate to say in retrospect, because I know that's not something everybody has in diaspora. But because of that, I was always more concerned with how I presented as a mixed race person. I'm quite white passing. I grew up in San Diego, going to the beach, being in the sun, playing water polo. So I used to be blonde, which really didn't help the inner turmoil of being like, oh yes, first I had to convince people I was Asian. Then I had to convince people that I was this ethnic group that maybe if you had family in the military, you knew what Okinawa was, but the vast majority of people did not. So it was layers of trying to unpack how to explain myself. But in doing that and being very interested in history from a very young age, I grew up at a time when, my family was lucky. We had a computer room. And so I would think of any questions I had about Okinawa that my mom or my obachan couldn't explain, and I would look it up on Wikipedia. And so I was exposed to Okinawan history, I think, much earlier than it sounds like a lot of people were. And listening to the stories of my grandmother being put into camp on Tinian, being forcibly sent back to Okinawa, which was where her parents were from, by the U.S. military, not getting a say in the movement of where she and her family were going, learning about the battle, and a third of our people being killed in 12 weeks. There were elements of what I was learning that sounded like what I was learning about Native American history in school, but I really never wanted to appropriate that label. It was very specific. Indigeneity to me was very specific to the North American context. It was very specific to what California natives had went through and what Native Americans had went through. And I never wanted to encroach upon that because that label wasn't for me. It wasn't until I actually saw a news report with Shinako in front of this background in 2018 about Indigenous Okinawan woman goes to the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues that I started thinking in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, maybe other people have this inkling. Maybe other people think that there are these similarities as well. And so then I met Shinako, and that sort of, I don't want to say she gave me the permission structure, but she changed my view of what indigeneity could be, and it was a much more world-expansive view than what I was being exposed to and what I thought growing up in California.
Interesting. Okay, I'm also mixed race, but I grew up in Okinawa. So it was a very interesting experience because in our city, we had many, in our school too, we had many mixed race, but there were not many mixed race who were not associated with the military. But my father actually did come to Okinawa because of the presence of U.S. military. Not a soldier, but as an Indian, he's Indian, to work for a business that caters to the military community. And I grew up outside of, like literally outside of the gate. Like gate was right in front of us, and both of my parents had business, and most of their customers were American. So I think not really as Okinawan or Ryūkyūan identity alone. I think I was more questioning my gender, like as women, because I saw a lot of next to my father's store was strip clubs, and those who were for U.S. military, entertaining them. So looking at those women who were working there, and they're not working for pleasure. They were working because they had to feed their family, because after the war, the proportion of female and male was imbalanced. Women had to work and raise the family, but the stigma that attached to it. And when looking at my grandmothers and my mother, who was really strong and powerful, I got confused. Okay, which one of these women, female image, which is what, So I think I had so much anger because the way I saw how the U.S. military personnel would treat women, and how the Okinawan people would react to that, because they have to make business out of it, no? So it was just anger. But when I went to University of Hawaii for my bachelor's and master's, I always try to avoid talking about military bases in Okinawa, because I was like, okay, I need to detach myself from that. But I always come back to this topic. So I was like, okay, let me just accept it and study about it. And then I had a chance to meet Native Hawaiian people to work against military occupation in Hawaii and in Okinawa. And that gave me the perspective of being indigenous. And it came like rather smooth to me. And I think it was a blessing, because if I were in Okinawa, maybe I wouldn't have accepted as smooth as it was in Hawaii. Because looking at your situation in Okinawa is really painful to admit that we are being colonized. But looking through somebody else's experience, from distance, you kind of like able to see, this is how it works. And this is similar to how we experience. So that's, I think, was that moment that I was in Hawaii, that years, was a really blessing. And in retrospect, I think it was guided by my ancestors that I had to be there at that time.
Yeah. My way of coming to indigeneity, I think, was mostly academic. So I forgot to say earlier, but I'm Okinawan on my mother's side. Her father, my grandfather, comes from Koki area near Nago, and then my grandmother comes from Miyakojima. And so I grew up visiting Okinawa quite frequently, especially to visit my grandparents. And my mother would say things like, Okinawa is different, but I didn't really know what different meant in the context of colonization by Japan. And so she would say things like, the butsuran is different in Japan versus Okinawa, or like our food is different, like the champuru or something. But I just didn't really understand what that meant until I got to college, and I really wanted to stay in Okinawa and study with my oji-chan, or stay with my oji-chan, my grandfather, and just live with him for as long as I could. And so I started looking into Okinawa as a research topic. And that's when I started realizing that actually having foreign military bases on Okinawa Island or in Okinawa Prefecture is not normal. It was so normalized to me when I'd go home and visit that I just never thought about it. And then I think similar to some of you, it was actually reading scholarship in Native, feminist, and indigenous studies that really opened my eyes to the fact that the U.S. military structure First of all, is there because Japanese colonialism, but then the way that they take land from indigenous Okinawans is very similar to the structure of settler colonialism. So the way that, the land that Okinawans needed to live for farming, for example, after the war when the economy was so devastated, the way that was taken from military bases. I started realizing that dispossession and land was at the heart of what's going on in Okinawa today. And so, in a way, I came to it, to an understanding of indigeneity academically. But I really hope that for younger Okinawans in Okinawa and in the diaspora, that they don't have to wait to get to college or even have to read books to understand how rich and beautiful our culture is.
Thank you. I think I came to the indigeneity quite late and really recent, because I was born and raised in Okinawa, and it was just like the presence of military and the people thinking, the way people say, oh, Yamato is a better place, you should study more and go to Yamato, speak good Japanese and act like Japanese, is like really ingrained in our culture and our community and education. And if I speak like Uchina Yamato-guchi, like mixed with our language, the people are like, oh, don't speak like that. You're speaking like uneducated people. And so that was normal to me. And I was colonized, and I was like internalized that value. And I thought that, Okinawa, like being in Okinawa is for uneducated people. And like I didn't want it to stay in Okinawa. And I left Okinawa to go to Tokyo, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be like a career woman in Tokyo or something. And yeah, and so like I went to Tokyo, and I was working for this international organization, and through that I met many people who work for their own people. It's make me think that, who is my people? I was a representative of the organization from Japan. I was like, I was having the Japanese, like name tag. I was like, am I really like representing Japan, or like who am I? What am I? Like, who is my people? And just start thinking of this, my identity. And also during the time, there was a lot of activism I was involved. And especially women's, the feminism movement, like Me Too movement, and I was involved in the activism in Tokyo. But I realized that nobody talk about me, like nobody talk about Okinawa. It's so many women dignity was invaded, and but none of them talking about it. It's always happening, but it just make me realize that that also influenced me, like who is actually my people. And I started to Google, like, and I encountered your podcast, and you mentioned something about Shinako Oyakawa, and who is Shinako Oyakawa? And I met your writing on the internet. I was like, what is this? What is this indigeneity? What is this Senju Minzoku? And what is this colonization? And I just like start reading many the people before us writing about it, and I just quit everything in Tokyo. I had a whole career, but like I just quit everything, and I came back to Okinawa, and like also like reconnecting with my family too. And it was so interesting. Like when I started working with like organizing something with Axels, and in the beginning, my family was really worried about, why, like, don't be so political. You don't get the job. People don't want to give a job, like, if you're too political. But I was so loud and noisy. But this gives me a lot of opportunity to talk and be loud and also write something. And so I just wanted to share, like, this like when I'm interested in like uchinaguchi, and I just ask my father, and this means this, and father say this, and my mom is like, no, this is that doesn't mean this is this, and like they're kind of like competing each other to teach me our language, which they didn't do back then. And also I was writing something connecting about critical race theory and decolonizing education in Okinawa. And my father read the article, and I thought he's gonna be like, oh, don't do this. But he said like, oh, interesting. And I feel like this text is expressing what I have been thinking about being teacher. My father is a teacher, and he's seen a lot of kids and a lot of education difficulty, and like the Okinawan kids and teachers are facing. And he finds something, not the solution, but like something reflecting through my writing about the decolonization. So it's, yeah, I kind of like that. It's a realization also, like it's still ongoing. But yeah, sorry, I talked too much.
Thank you.
It was beautiful.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice to hear and to share. So for me, as I said, I was born and raised in São Paulo as a third generation. So my grandparents, they went to Brazil in the 30s, 32. So before the war, after the disposition. And so I was raised as a Brazilian inside an Okinawan Japanese community in São Paulo. So for us, the identity was also very critical. So maybe in the childhood, I was part of the community really, but in the teenaging, as many other Nikkei and Okinawan Brazilians, we kind of try to cut this route because we want to become Brazilians. And then we learned our music and all this. But when I was 25 already, I was a master student. My grandfather was sick, so I started to take tea with him and ask him about his story, his history, which we don't read in the books in the Brazilian schools, because our schools are also very Eurocentric, so we hardly know anything about the Asian history in general or African history. So, but my grandfather then started to talk about the history of how they end up in Brazil, and he gave me my first book about Ryūkyū, Okinawa. And then, I mean, I was a sociologist, so I was shocked that I didn't know anything about this at this age, being a descendant. So I received a scholarship from Nahashi, from the city where he's from, after he passed away. And so he passed away 1 month later. I was in Okinawa for the first time with my very poor Japanese, but it was life-changing for me. Like I realized that it's a place that is inside me, and I decided like I'm always want to come back here, and so I've been going more to Okinawa. And but of course, it was very, very, very shocking for me to see the military bases. And then I met Shinako-san touring in the Henoko base. It was very deep for me, Shinako-san. And then, like, how can we forget after you see our history? So my PhD was dedicated to this topic in social science. And then during this research, I was doing autoethnography. So I was writing about our own experience as Ryūkyū and diasporic and LGBT, queer, indigeneity, and all this. So when I finally read about the recognition, the UN recognition of the Ryūkyūs as indigenous peoples in 2008, then I finished the PhD and we moved to the Atlantic Forest close to São Paulo. So it's not Okinawa, but it's a piece of land that we are reforesting, regenerating, working with the local territory and community. And of course, like being Brazilian also, it was very easy to understand the history of colonization and the situation of indigenous peoples, because in Brazil and South America, we have very similar things happening. And above all, not above all, but together with this, I think when I came here first time in 2018, this was really like another turning point for me to meet other indigenous peoples and be recognized very easily. Like, is our sisters and brothers, they totally understand our history, and we also try to understand everyone's history. So I think this space, despite all the challenges we have, is very powerful in this sense. And I really hope that we can keep going and being stronger, like as it was said today about health. I think our perspective can change the way that the world sees health, not just our health, but the planetary health, the health of the planet. So so thank you very much. I'm very happy to listen and to meet. For us also, like, to come here is for us to meet, and this is very precious, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really wonderful. I feel like I'm remembering myself and remembering others, and this is a really wonderful and beautiful experience. I think when I came to my indigeneity, it was because Lex was at the UN, and I had that similar mixed race grappling of, like, is it okay for me to claim this identity? And then I realized, kind of following along, and it took me a while, like, even though we are recognized as Indigenous peoples by the United Nations, I still couldn't quite make that step in. And then after I realized, like, it is really critical to see ourselves out there doing the work, that I started to lean into that more. I have nephews who I want them to be able to be proud and claim their own indigeneity, and for me it's more of a healing, like the planetary healing, but the healing and the remembering of self, so that's kind of where I was coming with my own indigeneity story. And I also just wanted to say, in terms of, like, diaspora, maybe we all know this, but for folks that are out there listening for the first time or just getting exposed to Okinawa and Ryūkyū, the largest diaspora outside of Okinawa is Japan. And then outside of that, it is Brazil, and then Hawaii, and then Peru. So we have large populations of our peoples having very diverse experiences, mixing with other Indigenous communities and forming new perspectives on what it means to be Indigenous as well. So I'm actually very excited to see what the future looks like, because we have Okinawan word called champuru, which means just like mixed, like just mixed up. It's one of my favorite Okinawan dishes. And I feel like that's the direction we're going in. Yes, please.
Just really quickly on the diaspora, because I do think that there is a critical distinction between our diaspora and, say, for instance, a Japanese diaspora, and that is we have such large diaspora populations because of colonization and the effects of colonization. After 1879, when Japan colonized us, they abolished our traditional communal land ownership system, and the land in which our ancestors lived on for thousands of years, knew how to take care of, knew how to sustain the population, no longer could sustain the population, and a massive famine happened as a result of Japanese colonial policies. We ended up in Hawaii because Japan was so concerned that we would migrate to the continental US or we would migrate to Europe, and Europeans and Americans would think lesser of Japan because they would actually be perceiving us. So they actually banned Uchinanchu from migrating to Europe and the continental United States for many years. So there's so many in Hawaii and in Brazil for that reason. And then again, after the United States took us, colonized us from 1945 to 1972, the US seized vast portions of our land, almost 30% in some cases, or in some years. And they did this at gunpoint. It's called Jikento Bulldoza. So the bayonets and bulldozers campaign, where they forced people out of their house at bayonet point, then made them watch as they bulldozed their homes to become military bases, and then negotiated additional contracts, mostly in South American countries, to send us to South America. So there are very specific colonial reasons we live all over the world as well. I think that often gets lost in an overarching diaspora conversation.
Thank you very much for that additional piece.
I am a historian.
Yeah,
by training.
Lex is amazing. Okay, and I'm also realizing we have about like 10 minutes left for our last question. Is that right? Do we have about 10 minutes? Okay, and so it's a big question. So as how we've discussed already, there are many critical human rights issues that could be brought up related to Okinawa. We are the poorest prefecture in Japan. We host a disproportionate amount of U.S. military bases. Violence from military affects women and children, environmental hazards as related to the military, and then again, being indigenous and not recognized as such by the government of Japan. The list does go on, but I am curious to hear from each of you, what is your intersection or primary focus related to human rights issues in Okinawa? I will pass to Shinako-san.
I think the most important thing is the language. That we are, banish our nation, and our nation's gone, and then the school system comes from Japan, and then we only speak Japanese, and then now we don't have any chance to learn our history. Now, according to the survey, less than 5% of my generation, like the 40s, only 5% or less can speak Ryūkyū languages. So when it comes to younger generation, like for example, my children's age, they don't speak any. They are like a monolingual Japanese people now, and then they learn English or other languages at school, but they have no chance to learn the Ryūkyū languages. So it's really critical, and we really have to revitalize our language. This is our rights as indigenous people. We can reclaim for the language rights, and that's connect to everything. I think that if you have a language, and then you can see the world from a Ryūkyū perspective, not from the colonizer's perspective. We need to assimilate. It's more like, we are Ryūkyū, and this is our land, this is our friends, the brothers and sisters, and then we can see the world from a Ryūkyū perspective. Yeah, so I think the language is really important.
I just want to emphasize our need for demilitarization. More military bases, be they U.S. bases which are being constructed, or Japanese self-defense force bases that are being rapidly constructed. More bases do not keep us safe. They make the Ryūkyūs a target. And so that's what I want to leave it as.
I think my focus is more on women's, or the people who, even within the indigenous community, get marginalized. So I think I stand in a unique place where I'm mixed, I'm a woman, and I grew up in that environment where I directly experienced seeing those women being exploited by military, and by later, when the military wasn't becoming a good customer, then become Japanese tourists. So seeing that, and even in our local indigenous community, how women are looked down upon, when we were the ones who were in the center of reconstructing Okinawa after the war. So all those, minimizing our role, or not giving us proper, opportunity or dignity, is, I think, that's what I'm most concerned of.
Yeah, I think like Lex, the bigger picture for me is demilitarization. But I'm mostly focused on land rights and environmental destruction because of the U.S. military. So Lex mentioned earlier that one of the effects of kind of the takeover of Ryūkyū Islands and their transformation into Okinawa Prefecture under Japanese colonization was that they made Okinawan lands unlivable by turning it into a cash crop economy. And then after World War II, the U.S. military takes over. And one of the effects of militarization is that, first of all, because of the war, there are a lot of unexploded ordnances, there's bombs, there's all sorts of military waste that's left over, and that affects not only the soil and the groundwater, but it also poses an ongoing threat to Okinawans. Whenever there's a construction site, for example, example, and then these UXOs are dug up. And it also feeds into the way that Japanese resortification has also taken over the island. And so there's so many ways in which Japanese colonialism and U.S. militarism are really poisoning the islands. And then because of that, Okinawan people's health suffers, right? Their right to clean water, their right to clean air, bodily autonomy, all of that is tied up in the way that the U.S. military and Japan both really treat Okinawans as disposable and our islands as disposable islands.
I want to focus in my field, and also my scope. I feel is a healing pedagogical, safe and brave space I want to hold with my people. And it's because our mind is colonized and we have so much internalization of like sense of inferiority towards America, towards Japan. And I feel like that's preventing us to dream bigger, dream other way. Like there is a world without the military. There is a world without just try to be like Japanese. Just be us. Like I feel like answer is within us, and we know that. But it just this so much painful history and memories are just preventing us to have access to that energy like you have in core. So I feel like safe space to talk about this pain, and I feel a lot from our elders, and even though within this generation feel the pain from the people before us, and so yeah, I can do, and what I want to do is create a space to liberate ourselves with the joy and dream. Yeah, that's what I want to do.
I agree with all of you. I think all these topics are very interconnected because, of course, like the loss of the language is also the loss of a worldview, of our relation with our ancestors, and the military. It's like really like in 2024 we had almost $3 trillion invested in the industry of war in the world. This is the data from the Stockholm Institute for Peace Research. And I mean, we have so many problems to solve. No? We have hunger. I mean, I'm also, because I'm Brazilian, I think like the Okinawan experience is also related to the world population experience, that lack of sanitation, problem of hunger, climate change issues, and it's being invested $3 trillion in the armies. Like, how can we solve this without facing this fact? And I think this in Okinawa, we have this experience, so we can share our experience to the world, so we can, who knows, maybe overcome this paradigm. And also like the gender issues, so linked to the military issue, because also in terms of masculinity, like the ideal of masculinity is produced by the army, by the soldier, by the, one kind of masculinity that we have to overcome, so the gender relations can be better, also for the two-spirit people. And so I think, of course, that for this we need self-determination. We talk so much about democracy, we talk so much about how people should be able to decide what it's going to happen in their lands, in their home, in their territories. So it hurt me very, very strongly, like to listen to the discourse about all this, and then the reality, we see like a lot of violence, like a daily violence, symbolic violence, physical violence, and a violence against the Mother Earth, which is our land, and our rivers. And I can see this happening in Okinawa, but also in Brazil, also in South America. So again, I think also as a singer and artist, I feel that the music for our people is very important. So it's a way of safeguarding our language, because we don't speak Uchinaguchi, hardly speak, but we still sing in our language. And this is also a place where there's our philosophy, our connection with the spirituality. So hopefully, with the knowledge and the blessing of our ancestors, we can keep protecting our lives and our home, né? Our planet. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think that brings us to about time. Yeah, and so thank you all so much for all of your stories and your perspectives. That's my intersection, is trying to find folks and uplift stories, because that's how we reach other people, is through those stories, and we need to tell those stories so we remember, so the next generation remembers, and go forward and backwards through time. And so really grateful for you being vulnerable and sharing, and for the hard work that goes into awakening to indigeneity. Each one of you went through a lot of hardship, I can imagine, to get to that place where you were open to that, because claiming indigeneity also is fraught with its own, intrinsic pain, I think, of identity and growth. So thank you. And I feel really grateful to Cultural Survival and the Indigenous Media Zone and the UN Permanent Forum for creating a space where we can join our brothers and sisters and friends and family. We have the saying in Okinawan, Ichari Bachode, which is once we meet, we are family. And I really feel that here. So thank you very much. And if you would like to hear more, we have a side panel external to the UN happening on Saturday from 2 to 4 p.m. at the People's Forum. And so that we'll find the link and we'll put that somewhere. And if you would like to hear any more about our panelists today, there's information on the Ichari Bachode podcast website and Instagram, and you can find us there. So thank you very much. Ippe ni he debitan.